One of the films I looked forward to watching the most when looking at my list for things to check out at HIF was the film Nanny. Directed by Sierra Leone auteur Nikiatu Jusu, the film stars Senegalese actress Anna Diop and currently sits at a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I highly recommend checking this movie out. However, for those who are a bit more skeptical, I will tell you why you should watch this movie. Now, there will be light spoilers in this review, so for those who are still watching, you don't have to worry too much about any major details being revealed because I'm just gonna say it now, but this film does hinge itself on a mystery, and light spoiler warning, but there is a massive plot twist towards the end of this movie. But once again, we will not be covering that in this video, so you will be okay. Now, the film follows the story of Aisha, a Senegalese immigrant now living in Harlem who works as a nanny for a rich couple living in the East Side. She hasn't been living in New York for that long, and the reason why she works as a nanny is to save up enough money for her son, who's around 6 years old, or 7 years old, to come live with her in New York. However, as she's sitting for this family and going on with her daily life, she starts to have strange dreams and visions of water, being underwater and creatures coming after her, and this escalates further and starts affecting her mental health and day-to-day life. Now, this film is pitched as a horror film, as I'm sure you've guessed after hearing all those details, and I personally wouldn't say it's like a horror film like your typical Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, or Halloween type of horror film, but this is more in tune to something like Get Out or Us. Definitely a psychological thriller. In fact, this film seems to draw a lot from Jordan Peele's style. This isn't exactly confirmed, so don't quote me on this, but a lot of the style and camera techniques seem very similar. There's also a Guillermo del Toro kind of vibe to it, in the sense of surrealism that Nanny has. This surrealist psychological horror vibe is all the more helped by its cinematography, and shout out to you, Rena Yang, for creating some amazing, beautiful, and haunting visuals. I mean, your cinematography skills fill me with envy. The use of lighting and colors don't just make the frame look pretty, but also serve as a purpose to show what the characters are feeling. As a filmmaker, if you can show a character's feelings and thoughts through lighting and colors instead of dialogue, I implore you, do it. Nanny truly takes advantage of the visual in visual storytelling. This film was also very character driven, which is always a good thing to see, especially in today's film market where plot is the only thing that really matters and not a consistent narrative. And everything that does drive the plot forward in this movie is strictly based on the characters and how they interact with each other. Though at times this can be slightly distracting because of the surrealist nature of this movie. At certain times it left me confused and slightly frustrated because I didn't know what was going on. Sort of like how I felt when watching Mr. Robot for the first time. Though once you got to the end, everything started to make sense. This is that kind of film where you can watch it again and try to pick up all the stuff you may have missed the first time you watched it. Another aspect of this film that didn't entirely work for me was the pacing, though I think this was more of an issue due to the script than anything else, and bits of information is extremely spread out, and once Aisha starts having lots of her dreams and visions, you are so taken by them that you may forget previous bits of information. I remember towards the end of the film, I was extremely taken aback by a reveal that was shown and hinted at during the middle of the film. I was so taken aback because of how brief it was that it left me with an almost jarring kind of feeling. The last kind of critique I have is that I feel like more time could have been spent on Aisha's personal relationships, specifically with her love interest. However, those are all only minor complaints I have, and I will say that overall this film is a very enjoyable and interesting experience. Now, let's talk about representation for a second. As I told you before, this film is directed by and stars two African women, specifically the main character Aisha, who is Senegalese. This was great to see, as I'm actually Senegalese myself. Nowadays, people always talk about representation in film, whether it be good or bad, and what it really means. And for me, it means that you actually recognize the culture and the people that you make films about. And I'm happy to say that each aspect of Senegalese culture that was talked about, like Chibojin for example, felt really, really good. African culture in general is very underrepresented, And as glad as I am that Black Panther is around, it kind of is sad that the most represented place in people in our continent is the one that doesn't even actually exist. So to see my people and West African folklore like Anansi the spider being talked about was a great thing. Also, showing the maternal aspects of our culture was a really cool thing as well, as not many people know, but before Islam made its way to Senegal, it was actually a matriarchal society. So all in all, I'm very pleased with what I was seeing and the representation in general. It really is a cool thing to see that films are actually doing this these days. And I'm also pleased to see how good the lighting was. It is harder to light people with dark skin, and sometimes in film it's frustrating to see that not being done well. And, I guess Rena Yang did her homework because the lighting was on point. She knocked it out of the park. Overall, this film was one that meant a lot to me due to everything that I mentioned, and I'm quite excited to see what Nikyatu Jusu does next. Once again, I highly recommend checking out this film if you can. It comes out on Amazon Prime around December 16th, I think, so when it does come out, go give it love, go give it support, especially if you're African like me and you want to get more representation for our people. Supporting these filmmakers that do this is a really, really good thing. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later.